What do you want to talk about? What Prescott said is true. I'm Cory. I own a small design studio here in town. I've been a graphic designer for 32 years, plus or minus. I own a notebook company called Resketch, and I am the current president of the Arizona chapter of AIGA. I've been bullied into making sure that this presentation is only 20 to 25 minutes long. So I had a very heartfelt, emotional couple slides here of where I'm from and how I got to where I am. We're going to skip all of that. I can only promise you we're going to laugh and you are going to cry and all that stuff, but maybe we'll touch on some of this as we get into the presentation. So in my 32 years as a graphic designer, I have had the good fortune and absolute and total luck to work on just a couple of projects that were in hindsight sought as kind of, I hate to use the word innovation or innovative, but forward thinking and successful. So in putting this together, which I had way too much time to prepare for, this presentation has taken multiple forms, but I wanted to look at those projects that we worked on. One was one that I was hired to do, one I was hired on to continue, and the other one I purchased, rebranded, and relaunched. So there was 3 approaches to 3 projects that kind of worked out in our favor. And I wanted to kind of boil that down to what were the commonalities there that made them successful in hindsight, because I don't think you can kind of prepare for this. So I kind of came up with 4 things: acceptance, constraint, curiosity, and courage. They don't look terribly exciting on the page here. I'm also wondering now that I'm looking at that, have any of these ever been talks at CreativeMornings? Sounds like one of those topics you guys might use. So I'm just going to jump right in, so we have room for questions at the end, and talk about acceptance first. Start where you are. I think acceptance is completely and totally underrated in the process of creation. It is the discipline of working with what's actually in front of you instead of waiting for the perfect tools or ideal conditions. It's also kind of a litmus test of, are you ready to start and are you committed to something? Every project that I've ever worked on, there was that time and place where it's like you either waited for better tools, better circumstances, more money, whatever, to get started. Those projects never seem to work out or are very successful. So acceptance makes you start with reality, not fantasy. It helps you and teaches you to treat limitations as normal, not as punishment. And it also forces you to look for potential in the ordinary things around you to move forward. And I think that's really important. The second thing is constraint. These are also things that are very hard to manufacture. You kind of have to just be ready for them as they hit you. But I think constraint is extremely important. Necessity creates everything. Let limits shape the work. I don't think I've ever had a budget that is what I thought was enough. I've never thought I've had enough time, et cetera, et cetera. So those constraints are the reality that shape the problem. They narrow the field and force you to focus on so solutions can emerge. Time, budget, and tools matter even when they don't. One of the tricks I kind of put on myself now is that even if I do have enough time, even if I do have enough of a budget, and even if I have the tools that I want, I try to limit those to force myself to think faster and quicker. I had a professor in college, an illustration professor, who would give us illustration projects, but he would not let us use traditional tools. So he would say, like, you have to do a self-portrait, but you can't use any traditional drawing tools or traditional surfaces. So we had to like sharpen sticks and dip them in ink or burn the ends of them or whatever. But it forced us to think more creatively and push the boundaries. So let those constraints prioritize what truly matters, getting through the finish line. And obviously one of the things, and it used to be AIGA's mission statement back in the day, is add by subtracting. Curiosity. Learn to ask questions. This is my favorite part. I'm a talker. There's people in this room who know that. Steve Tansley is smiling back there. Ideas begin with questions. Questions force you to look under the surface and learn how to ask better questions, not just look for smarter answers. And I think that's important. A lot of people love smart answers, but sometimes smart answers cover up the questions you should actually be asking. Question everything literally. At Skaaren Design, we have systematized the question asking process. We have a lot of documents and we have a lot of things that we go through with clients to make sure we ask everything possible. And we keep asking questions until it gets uncomfortable, and then we ask a few more questions. And we use the answers we get from those questions to completely reframe the problem with the client or the project or whatever it is that we're working on. Courage. This is my favorite one. Don't follow the crowd. There was a saying, I think it's Lee Kalau, and he says, what everybody wants is what their neighbor has, and what their neighbor has is last year's model. It takes a bit of nerve, but you have to be okay with not chasing the same horizon everyone else. You have to trust that depth is more valuable than novelty. Ignore what everyone's sprinting towards. Pay attention to what already works. Notice what's been left behind, and be willing to not know where you're going, even if you think you know where you're going. The 3 projects that I'm thinking in my head, Resketch, Ready Made Magazine, and Kono, even though we had defined endpoints, we questioned it every step of the way, and those projects did change as they evolved, and they became better for it because we're not slaves to those smart answers that we had defined in the beginning. This is the last thing I'm going to say before we talk a little bit about Resketch and ask some questions, but this is important. In the end, innovative work is slow, it's messy, it's quiet, and it's often a fight. These are all deeply human traits. It can't be measured in a spreadsheet or systematized, but it's infinitely more meaningful because of that. And in a lot of ways, modern society, as we kind of rush forward, break things, disrupt things, and I'm talking about AI and systems and Slack and all these things that we use to work together, we are removing humans from that system. And everything that I've kind of mentioned here, these 4 little talking points, they are human-centric. And as we remove humans from the system, we get less and less innovative. And in some weird way, we're kind of innovating ourselves to death. And that's what I think about innovation. Now, all of this kind of comes full circle for me in my life with a company called Resketch. Now, has anyone here heard of Resketch? Yeah, okay. That's good to hear. Resketch came into my life about 13 years ago, happenstancely with a partner of mine in Chicago. And he's an artist. His name is Sean Smith. He's the original founder of Resketch. And he accidentally, talk about acceptance, one day, anyone from Chicago in here? Anyone know of the Waste Shed? No? Okay. There's a place in Chicago called the Waste Shed, and it's kind of like a hipster Goodwill. And it's a collecting depot for leftover art supplies and so on and so forth. And one day, my partner Sean, he walked into the Waste Shed and he saw literally a pyramid of unused reamed copy machine paper. And it was all the ugly colors that you just wouldn't choose at like a Kinko's or a FedEx, like the salmon, the lemon, the blue, all that stuff. And it was literally like to the ceiling. And he knew the guy at the Waste Shed, and he's like, man, where did you get all this paper? And they said, oh, a copy machine place went out of business down the street and they abandoned all their paper. And he's like, we can't sell it. No one wants it. So my friend Sean was like, well, how much do you want for it? And he's like, just give me a couple $100 and you can have it. Now, Sean didn't know what Resketch was going to be at the time, but he just thought, I'll just never buy paper again. I'll just put this in my garage and I will put this stuff in he's an artist, so he used paper a lot. The paper sat in his garage. I'm sure the wife wasn't too happy about that. And one day he got a paper sample book in the mail from French Paper. And if you've ever seen a paper sample book, you'll know that it has all the samples of paper from that company in one little packet. And he looked at that and he said, oh my God, I got all that paper in my garage. It's all different colors. It's all weird stuff. I'm just going to make notebooks out of it and sell it to my friends to get rid of it. And that's how Resketch was born. Accepting what you have and just simply moving forward, probably out of an act of frustration, just get rid of it. So Resketch makes notebooks. What came of that is he started a Kickstarter. He raised the money for the production costs. I don't remember how many notebooks were originally made in that first run, but it was successful. It sold out, and he got rid of the notebooks. The end result of that was people contacting him saying, please God, I have paper. Will you take it off my hands? And we learned that there was no secondary market for paper. If you're stuck with paper, it goes nowhere. So if a printer has extra paper after a run, or if a job gets canceled, or a copy machine place goes out of business, for some reason, people just don't want unwanted and unused paper. So people started sending Resketch paper from all over the country, and it became all kinds of usable, well, we have a rule, has to be unused and unwanted paper. So we started making notebooks out of what you see here today. Now, there's a tremendous amount of constraint involved in Resketch. We make literally the entire brand is made up of spare parts, meaning the only thing that we purchase is the black and brown covers, and because we letterpress them and we keep those consistent. Everything else you see is literally made for something that was either going to go in the trash or be recycled. So we had to find people who were willing to work with us. Binderies and collators don't really love to mess things up and take things out of order. So you can imagine, for example, when we moved to Phoenix, we went to all the binderies in town, and they were like, why on earth would you do this? It's a lot of work, and we are paid to keep things in order, not randomize things, much less our equipment isn't really calibrated to take random stacks of random paper and collate it. So initially it was just, no, we're not willing to do this. It's too much work. We have to stop our whole production line just for this one little company. We're not going to do it. So we had to kind of put our thinking caps on, and we had to work with them and learn how to use their equipment non-traditionally to create the notebooks that we have today. This is just some of the notebooks open, so you can kind of get a sense of what it is. Has anyone seen a Resketch notebook? Okay. For those of you who haven't, for whatever reason, when we tell people what we do, we make notebooks out of rescued and reclaimed paper, and what that means is that every page in the notebook is different. They say, yeah, I get it. You make notebooks out of recycled paper. We're like, no. People get the impression that we take all this paper, pulp it back down for some reason, and make new paper and then make the notebooks. Until they touch it and see it and open every page and realize that literally every page in our notebooks are different, could be a different kind of stock, texture paper, could be watercolor paper, construction paper, whatever. No matter how much we explain that, it's not until someone sees it, touches and opens it where they have that moment of like, oh, I get it. How do you do this? So it takes a lot of work and a lot of practice and a lot of kind of moxie to find partners that are willing to work with us and do this. Now, the end result is we've realized that we just make notebooks for creative people. And the unintended consequences of saving all this paper around the United States is we were not a part of it, but there has been studies about when the brain interacts with different surfaces and different colors page after page, it activates the brain and you become more creative and you think more freely. We have therapists who buy our notebooks in bulk for their patients to give them as journals. But all that was a side effect of the real accomplishment, which Sean really wanted to get accomplished, which was like all of this paper, unused paper, going into recycling. And recycling is not the best thing for the environment. If we want to talk about innovation, you'd think recycling was an innovative step forward. But the truth is it's very chemically heavy, very energy heavy, and very water heavy. And it's better than nothing, but it's not great. And the idea to us of unused paper being recycled just to make more paper that's probably not going to get used and recycled to make more paper was madness. So that's where the original idea for Resketch kind of was born and kept going. And we now have like a supply chain across the United States where we rescue about 8 to 10 tons of paper a year. And we've been rescuing that much paper for about 13 years, which is about 130 tons of paper pulled from the waste stream and turned into sustainable creative tools. The secondary goal was to make sure that the notebooks didn't look like a toy, which is a potential possibility. So our goal was to how can we kind of take all this stuff and really make it sophisticated and a usable notebook. So we also had to develop an algorithm that puts a certain mixture of paper into each notebook. So when you do buy a notebook and use it, you can actually use it. And you can bring it in, whether you're the CEO of a big company or run a daycare, you can bring one of our notebooks into a meeting and not be embarrassed by it. And all this photography was shot by Mr. Brandon Sullivan back there. And I only bring him up because he's the best photographer in Phoenix. And secondly, he is the one who really makes us look like a professional company. He makes our notebooks look professional. So shout out to him. We also have another unintended consequence of Resketch is that a lot of companies are looking for ways to show off that they are environmentally responsible. So we obviously have a custom notebook program. These are some of the older ones that we do. My favorite one is this one, the Pocket Guide to AI. That is Microsoft, and they put their Pocket Guide to AI on Resketch paper. So, to end it all, sustainable creativity. A lot of waste in the creative space. I've been in publishing for 30 years. You can about imagine how much waste I put into the waste stream with God knows how many magazines that we printed, sold, end up in the trash. Like I said, 10 tons of paper a year, 13 years, 130 tons rescued. And that's it.